That dress looks like it came straight from a donation bin." Bradley Kemp's voice sliced through the Christmas gala, loud enough for everyone to hear. Derek Holloway stood frozen, his daughter's small hand trembling in his. The little girl's hand-stitched dress suddenly felt like a scarlet letter. Around them, colleagues turned away, pretending not to notice. Derek pulled Penny closer, ready to slip into the shadows and disappear. But Bradley wasn't finished. He leaned down toward the 8-year-old, his lips curling into a smirk. Poor thing. With a father who fetches coffee for a living, you'll probably end up the same. Penny's tears fell silently onto her carefully mended dress. No one moved. No one spoke. Except for the woman standing near the ice sculpture, her champagne glass now shattered across the marble floor. CEO Regina Cole stepped forward, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What she did next would expose a truth about Derek that no one in that ballroom expected. The fluorescent lights of Cole Industries headquarters flickered softly above Derek Holloway's desk, casting pale shadows across stacks of paperwork that never seemed to shrink. At 38 years old, he had spent 3 years in this corner of the administrative floor, tucked away where few executives bothered to look. His title read Administrative Assistant, but the job description had long since expanded beyond anything written in his contract. He arrived before sunrise and left long after sunset, filling the hours between with tasks that ranged from scheduling meetings to fixing jammed printers to organizing files that no one else wanted to touch. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, sorting documents into color-coded folders, while his mind wandered to the small apartment across town, where an 8-year-old girl waited for him to come home. Penny had been the center of his universe since the day she was born, but even more so since her mother passed away 4 years ago. Cancer had taken Christine slowly, painfully, and Derek had held her hand through every treatment, every setback, every whispered goodbye. In those final weeks, she had made him promise one thing: give our daughter a beautiful life. He had nodded through tears, not knowing then how heavy that promise would become. Now he carried it with him every single day, in the lunchboxes he packed before dawn, in the bedtime stories he read despite his exhaustion, in the way he checked her homework even when his eyes could barely stay open. His colleagues rarely noticed him, which suited Derek just fine. He preferred the invisibility that came with his position, the quiet satisfaction of completing tasks without fanfare or recognition. When someone needed help with a spreadsheet, he appeared silently at their desk with solutions. When the coffee machine broke down, he fixed it before anyone could file a complaint. He never asked for credit. He never expected praise. His reward came in the form of a paycheck that barely covered rent and groceries, supplemented by night shifts at a warehouse across town, where he loaded boxes until his shoulders screamed for mercy. The photograph on his desk showed Penny at age 6, her smile so wide it seemed to stretch beyond the frame. She had inherited her mother's auburn hair and her father's deep brown eyes. But what Derek loved most was her spirit, the way she found joy in simple things like cardboard boxes and crayons, and stories about princesses who saved themselves. She never complained about their small apartment or their second-hand furniture. She simply loved him with the unconditional devotion that only children possess, and that love gave him strength to face another day. That evening, as Derek gathered his things to leave, Penny's voice echoed in his memory from their conversation the night before. "Daddy, do the people at your work like you?" He had paused, surprised by the question, unsure how to answer. "They respect the work I do," he had finally said, which felt true enough without being a lie. But Penny had looked at him with those knowing eyes. "That is not what I asked," she had replied softly. He had kissed her forehead and changed the subject, but the question lingered in his mind like a splinter he could not remove. The announcement came through company email 3 weeks before Christmas, its cheerful font and festive borders promising an evening of celebration. Cole Industries' annual holiday gala, the subject line proclaimed, "Employees and families welcome." Derek read the message twice, his finger hovering over the delete button. These events were not designed for people like him, administrative assistants, who existed in the margins of corporate hierarchy. He had never attended in his 3 years with the company. But this year, something made him hesitate. Penny had been asking about his workplace with increasing frequency. She wanted to see where Daddy went every day, wanted to meet the people he talked about. When Derek mentioned the holiday gala that evening, her eyes lit up with excitement. "Can we go? Please, Daddy. Can we really go to a fancy party?" Her enthusiasm was infectious, and before he could list all the reasons why attending might be a mistake, he found himself nodding. "We will see," he had said, which in their private language meant yes, but I need to figure out the details. The details required creativity and sacrifice. Penny needed something appropriate to wear, and the discount stores offered nothing that would not mark her as different. Derek spent 3 nights after his warehouse shifts, hunched over Christine's old sewing machine, a contraption he had barely touched since her death. His fingers, calloused from years of loading boxes, struggled with the delicate fabric and thin needles. He pricked himself countless times, small drops of blood that he carefully washed out before continuing. He altered one of Penny's older dresses, adding fabric from a blouse he found at Goodwill, stitching by hand where the machine could not reach. The result was imperfect but beautiful, a patchwork of love and determination that Penny declared the prettiest dress in the whole world. For shoes, he worked an extra weekend shift at the warehouse, the overtime pay just enough to buy a pair of simple black flats that made her twirl with delight in front of the bathroom mirror. Bradley Kemp occupied the opposite end of Derek's universe within Cole Industries. As regional sales manager, he commanded a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a reputation that preceded him down every hallway. He was the kind of man who measured human worth in titles and tax brackets, who confused cruelty with strength and intimidation with leadership. His suits cost thousands of dollars, and he made sure everyone knew it, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced arrogance during meetings. The administrative staff had learned to avoid his gaze, to become invisible when he passed, because catching his attention meant becoming a target for his particular brand of casual humiliation. Derek had experienced that cruelty firsthand during his first month at the company, when he had accidentally spilled coffee near the executive's shoes. The tongue lashing that followed had lasted 5 full minutes, delivered loudly enough for the entire floor to hear. Regina Cole existed in an entirely different category, a figure of almost mythical status within the company she had built from nothing. At 55, she commanded respect, not through intimidation, but through quiet competence and unwavering standards. Her office occupied the top floor, accessible only by private elevator. Employees spoke of her in hushed tones, sharing stories of her fairness alongside warnings about her exacting expectations. What few people knew was the path she had walked to reach that corner office. Those details remained locked away, guarded secrets that she revealed to no one. The night of the gala arrived with the first snowfall of December, fat white flakes drifting past streetlights like confetti from heaven. Derek helped Penny into her coat, careful not to wrinkle the dress they had worked so hard to create. She looked beautiful, her auburn hair brushed until it shone, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Are you nervous, Daddy?" she asked as they waited for the bus. "A little," he admitted, "but having you with me makes it better." She squeezed his hand, and in that moment, he believed they could face anything together. The grand ballroom of the Meridian Hotel had been transformed into a winter wonderland, every surface glittering with lights and crystal. Derek paused at the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed by the sheer opulence surrounding them. Champagne towers rose toward vaulted ceilings, while ice sculptures depicted the company logo in frozen perfection. A string quartet played classical arrangements of holiday songs. This was a world he did not belong to, a reminder of every limitation that had shaped his life. But Penny tugged at his hand, her face radiant with wonder, and he followed her into the crowd. They found a quiet corner near the dessert table, a relatively safe harbor from which to observe the festivities. Penny's eyes grew wide at the array of treats, tiny cakes and chocolate fountains, and fruit arranged into elaborate designs. "Can I have one?" she whispered, as if afraid the abundance might disappear if she spoke too loudly. Derek nodded, selecting a small plate and helping her choose modest portions. They ate in comfortable silence, father and daughter sharing a moment of unexpected sweetness. For a brief window of time, everything felt possible. The collision with reality came in the form of Bradley Kemp's voice, cutting through the ambient noise like a blade through silk. Well, look who decided to grace us with their presence." Derek's shoulders tensed immediately. Bradley stood a few feet away, champagne glass in hand, his smile sharp enough to draw blood. The administrative assistant himself. "I did not realize we opened the gala to the help." Several nearby guests turned to watch. Derek pulled Penny slightly behind him, a protective instinct overriding his usual strategy of retreat. "Good evening, Bradley," he said quietly. "We were just enjoying the party." Bradley's eyes traveled downward, examining Penny with critical assessment. "And who is this little creature? That dress looks like it came straight from a donation bin." The words landed like physical blows, each syllable designed to wound. Derek felt Penny's grip tighten on his hand, felt her small body press closer against his leg. The room seemed to narrow around them as Bradley's sneer filled his entire field of vision. Other employees had stopped their conversations now, forming a loose circle of silent witnesses around the confrontation. Derek's mind raced through possible responses, each one carrying potential consequences he could not afford. He thought of the rent due next week, the groceries Penny needed, the promise he had made to Christine. Fighting back would feel satisfying but might cost him everything. So he did what he had always done when faced with cruelty. He swallowed his anger and prepared to leave. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured to Penny. "Let us get some air." But Bradley shifted his position, blocking their path. "Leaving so soon? The party is just getting started." A memory surfaced unbidden, Christine's face in the hospital bed, her voice barely above a whisper. She had been talking about Derek to her sister. "He carries everything alone. He never complains, never asks for help. Sometimes I wish he would let someone see how heavy it all is." Derek had overheard those words from the hallway, had filed them away in the part of his heart he kept locked. Now they echoed alongside Bradley's taunts, two voices from different worlds, speaking truths he could not reconcile. Bradley had apparently grown bored with targeting Derek directly. His attention turned fully to Penny. "Poor thing," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Does your daddy tell you stories about how someday you will be somebody important?" He leaned closer. "Here's a little secret, sweetheart. People like you and your daddy, you do not become important. You fetch coffee and make copies, and pray that somebody like me does not notice you exist. Some of us are born to lead, and some of us are born to serve." Penny's lower lip trembled. A single tear escaped down her cheek, but she did not cry for herself. "Daddy is the hardest worker in the whole world," she said, her voice small but fierce. "He takes care of me all by himself. He fixes everything. He makes the best pancakes, and he reads me stories every night, even when he is really tired." Her words came faster now, tumbling out with desperate conviction. "He's not just a coffee person. He's my daddy, and he is better than anybody." The declaration hung in the air, beautiful and heartbreaking and completely inadequate against adult cruelty. Bradley threw back his head and laughed. "Oh, that is precious." He turned to address the gathered crowd. "You see this? This is exactly why I always say we need better screening for these events. Let in the riffraff, and suddenly the whole party smells like desperation and thrift stores. A few people chuckled nervously. Most simply looked away, unwilling to participate, but equally unwilling to intervene. The silence of the majority was its own kind of cruelty. Through the crowd, Derek caught a glimpse of Regina Cole standing near an ice sculpture. The CEO held a champagne glass in her hand, her expression unreadable. She had been watching the scene unfold, had heard every word Bradley uttered. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Then Penny sobbed again, and Derek's attention snapped back to his daughter. Bradley delivered his final blow with precision. He crouched down to Penny's level. "Listen here, little girl. Your daddy pushes papers and answers phones. That is all he will ever do. And judging by the look of things, you will probably end up the same way. Some families just are not meant for more than that." The words struck like physical blows, each one designed to wound the deepest parts of a child's heart. Penny's tears flowed freely now, not from shame about herself, but from hearing her beloved father dismissed as worthless. Before Derek could respond, a sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. The sharp, crystalline explosion of a champagne glass shattering against marble. Every head turned toward the source. Regina Cole stood 10 feet away. The remains of her glass scattered at her feet, her face transformed into something that made even Bradley take a step backward. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as she walked forward, her heels clicking against the floor with the measured rhythm of approaching judgment. Bradley Kemp, Regina's voice carried across the ballroom without shouting. Every conversation fell silent. The string quartet stopped mid-note. "I have been watching this performance for the past 10 minutes. Would you like to explain to me why you are terrorizing one of my employees and his child at a company event designed to celebrate our workforce?" Her tone was calm, controlled, but underneath lay something that promised consequences beyond imagination. Bradley's confident sneer flickered before reasserting itself. "Regina, I was simply having a bit of fun. You know how these things go. The man cannot even dress his daughter properly for a formal event. Someone had to point out the obvious. Surely you understand that standards must be maintained." His hand gestured dismissively toward Penny, who had pressed herself against Derek's side. Regina's response came after a pause so long that Bradley visibly began to sweat. "Standards." She repeated the word as if tasting something rotten. "Let me tell you about standards, Bradley." She turned to address the crowd. 3 months ago, we nearly lost the Henderson account. $7 million in annual revenue. Gone, because someone missed a critical clause that would have exposed us to massive liability. Do you know who caught that error at 2 a.m. while reviewing documents that were not even part of his job description? She pointed directly at Derek. This man. The crowd stirred, whispers rippling through the gathered employees. Derek felt his face flush with surprise. He remembered that night, the sinking feeling when he noticed the problematic language buried in paragraph 47 of a 70-page contract. He had flagged it through proper channels, assumed it had been handled. He had no idea anyone in leadership knew about his involvement. Regina continued. 2 years ago, when the Henderson family lost their teenage son, their entire team fell apart with grief. Deadlines were missed, communications went unanswered. Do you know who spent his own lunch breaks for 6 weeks personally handling the overflow, keeping the project alive without ever asking for recognition? Derek Holloway. The man you just accused of being nothing more than someone who fetches coffee. He has trained more new employees than anyone in HR. He arrives before anyone else and leaves after everyone because he believes that work worth doing is worth doing well. Bradley's face had gone from confident to something approaching fear. Regina, I had no idea. I was just making conversation. The excuse sounded hollow. How was I supposed to know about any of this? He looked around wildly for support. Over some assistant? Are you seriously throwing away millions because I hurt someone's feelings? Let me tell you something that very few people in this room know. Regina's voice dropped lower. 30 years ago, I was a single mother working as a janitor in an office building downtown. My daughter was 4 years old, and I could not afford childcare, so I brought her with me on my night shifts. She would sleep on a pile of clean rags in the supply closet while I mopped floors and emptied trash cans. The executives walked past me every day without seeing me. One of them, a man very much like you, made it his personal mission to humiliate me whenever possible. He called my daughter names, mocked my clothes, told me I would never amount to anything. The ballroom had become utterly silent. Regina continued, I built this company from nothing. I built it with the same hands that once scrubbed toilets. I built it because someone eventually gave me a chance, because one person saw past my circumstances to my potential, and I swore that when I had power, I would never allow anyone in my organization to treat another human being the way I was treated. Her voice hardened. You have violated that principle in the most public way possible. Bradley Kemp, as of this moment, you are terminated from Cole Industries. You will collect your belongings tomorrow under security escort. Any attempt to contest this decision will be met with documentation of your conduct over the past 3 years, including the 17 formal complaints filed against you that HR has been sitting on because you happen to be a top performer. Regina paused. Your performance does not excuse your character. Nothing excuses treating people as less than human. The former sales manager stood motionless. You cannot do this. I have brought in more revenue than anyone. You need me, Regina. Over some assistant? This is insane. His voice rose with desperation. Regina's expression did not change. Security will escort you out. Merry Christmas, Bradley. 2 security guards materialized, guiding him toward the exit until the ballroom doors closed behind him with a soft, final click. Regina turned to face Derek and Penny, her expression softening. She knelt down to eye level with the 8-year-old. That is a beautiful dress you are wearing. Did someone special make it for you? Penny nodded, her voice trembling. My daddy made it. He stayed up really late because he wanted me to feel pretty. Regina smiled warmly. Your daddy sounds like a remarkable man. Would you mind if I borrowed him for just a moment? Derek followed Regina to a quiet corner near the ice sculpture. When they were relatively alone, Regina spoke first. I owe you an apology. Not for Bradley, that situation was long overdue, but for not recognizing your contributions properly long before tonight. She met his eyes directly. I review performance reports quarterly, and your name appears constantly in the margins. Every department you touch runs more smoothly, and yet you have remained invisible, underpaid, and underappreciated for 3 years. That failure belongs to me. Derek struggled to find words. I do not do any of it for recognition. Penny and I, we do not need much. We just need stability. That is what my wife made me promise before she passed. Give our daughter a beautiful life. I have been trying to figure out what that means ever since. Regina nodded slowly. Invisibility is not always a choice we make freely. Sometimes it is a survival strategy. The question becomes whether we accept that invisibility as permanent or whether we eventually step into the light we have earned. You have earned visibility, Derek. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of unexpected warmth. Colleagues who had never spoken to Derek approached him with genuine interest, asking about his daughter, his work, his life outside the office. Some admitted they had witnessed Bradley's cruelty over the years and regretted their silence. A woman from accounting, her eyes glistening, told Derek that Bradley had made her cry in a meeting 3 months ago over a minor spreadsheet error. A young man from marketing confessed he had been looking for another job because he could not take another day of Bradley's condescension. One by one, they came forward, not to celebrate Bradley's downfall, but to acknowledge that Derek's dignity had been defended when theirs had not been. Penny had become something of a celebrity, charming executives and assistants alike with her curious questions. She asked the CFO why his tie had little fish on it and told a senior vice president that her daddy made better hot chocolate than the fancy kind they served here. The hand-stitched dress that had marked her as an outsider now seemed to glow with distinction, a badge of honor rather than shame. Later, as the party wound down, Derek stood near the window watching the snow fall over the city below. The flakes caught the light from 1,000 windows, each one a tiny universe of warmth in the cold December night. Penny had fallen asleep on a couch nearby, her small body curled into a comfortable ball, her hand still clutching a napkin with a chocolate smudge from her adventures at the dessert table. Regina appeared beside him, offering a cup of hot chocolate without asking if he wanted one. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. "I did not build this company alone," Regina said finally. "People think success is individual, but it is not. It is all the invisible contributions, all the small kindnesses, all the moments when someone chose to help without being asked. That is what creates something worth having. You understand that better than most people I have ever employed." That night, driving home through streets decorated with Christmas lights, Penny stirred in her car seat. "Daddy, did tonight really happen?" "It really happened, sweetheart. Every bit of it." She nodded sleepily. "That lady was nice, the one who made the mean man go away." Derek smiled. "Yes. She told me something important. She said sometimes being invisible is a choice we make, and sometimes it is a choice made for us. She said I could choose differently now." Penny considered this. "Do you want to be not invisible, Daddy?" The question cut to the heart of everything Derek had wrestled with. "I think I might," he admitted. "I think your mama would have wanted that." 1 year later, Derek stood near the entrance of the company holiday gala, watching new employees arrive with their families. His title now read Administrative Coordinator, a position earned through genuine effort rather than favoritism. The promotion had come with a salary that finally allowed him to stop working warehouse shifts, to be home for dinner every night, to read Penny bedtime stories without fighting to keep his eyes open. He had not forgotten the weight he once carried, but it no longer pressed against his chest with the same crushing intensity. Penny had chosen a red velvet dress this year, purchased from a regular store with prices that still made him wince, but no longer seemed impossible. She looked beautiful in it, but not more beautiful than she had looked in the hand-stitched creation from the year before. Both dresses carried the same love. Only the circumstances had changed. A young man in a slightly ill-fitting suit caught his attention. The man held the hand of a small boy, whose eyes were wide with overwhelming grandeur. They stood at the threshold, hesitating. Derek crossed the floor to where they stood. "Welcome to the party. First time attending?" The man nodded nervously. "I'm new in the mailroom. Only been here 3 months. I was not sure if we should come." Derek smiled warmly. "It can seem overwhelming at first. But let me tell you something. The people in this room are just people. Some are kind and some are not. The difference is not in them. It is in how you see yourself." The young father looked skeptical. "Easy to say when you belong here." Derek laughed genuinely. "I was you 12 months ago. I stood right where you are standing, wondering if anyone would notice I did not belong. A manager named Bradley Kemp noticed and decided to make an example of me in front of everyone. Called my daughter's dress a donation bin find." The man's eyes widened. "What happened?" Derek pointed across the room where Regina Cole stood. "Our CEO fired him on the spot. Not because he insulted me, but because she understood that how we treat invisible people says everything about who we really are." Penny appeared at Derek's side. "Daddy, the dessert table has chocolate fountains." Then she noticed the small boy. "Hi, I am Penny. Do you want to come see them with me? My daddy used to work in a small desk, but now he works in a bigger desk because he helped lots of people." And a nice lady noticed. The two children disappeared into the crowd together. Across the room, Regina Cole caught Derek's eye. She raised her champagne glass slightly, a small gesture of acknowledgement that carried the weight of shared understanding between two people who had walked similar paths. Derek nodded in return, feeling the connection that had formed between them over the past year, not as boss and employee, but as two human beings who recognized each other's struggles. Then he turned back to the young father, who was watching his son disappear into the crowd with something like wonder on his face. "You should find something to eat," Derek said. "The shrimp appetizers are actually excellent, and the servers always bring extra to the corners where they think management is not watching." He smiled, remembering his own first encounter with the hidden abundance of these events. "It is one of the things I learned back when I was invisible. The good stuff is usually hiding where no one important looks." That night, Derek tucked Penny into bed in their upgraded apartment, 3 floors higher than their previous place, with a second bedroom and windows that faced the sunrise. "Good night, sweetheart," he whispered. "Thank you for being proud of me." Her eyes flickered open briefly. "Always, Daddy. Always. Always. Always." She paused thoughtfully. "Is the boy's daddy going to be okay? Like you became okay?" Derek considered the question. "I hope so. I tried to help him understand what took me a long time to learn, that your worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion." Penny nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Mama always said the best thing when someone helps you is to help someone else, like a chain that keeps going forever." Standing in the doorway of Penny's room, Derek allowed himself to feel the full weight of gratitude for everything that had happened. The humiliation that had felt so devastating in the moment had become the catalyst for transformation he never would have sought on his own. Regina's intervention had opened doors he had not known existed. But more than that, it had shown him something about himself that Christine had always seen, but he had never quite believed. He was worthy of recognition, not despite his struggles, but because of them. Every sacrifice, every late night, every swallowed insult had built a foundation of character that others could finally see and appreciate. The Christmas tree in their living room glowed with lights Derek and Penny had hung together. Among the ornaments was a new addition this year, a small glass champagne flute that Regina had given him, engraved with the date of what she called his emergence. The breaking of that glass had broken something else as well, the illusion that invisibility was the only safe choice for people like him. The sound of shattering crystal had announced the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. He thought about Penny's question from a year ago. "Daddy, do the people at your work like you?" Now he knew the answer. Some liked him, some respected him, some had probably forgotten he existed, but none of that mattered as much as he once thought it did. What mattered was that he liked himself. What mattered was that he showed up every day trying to do good work and treat people with kindness. What mattered was that when his daughter looked at him, she saw someone worth admiring. The snow continued to fall outside the window, each flake unique, each one contributing to a blanket of white that transformed the ordinary city into something magical. Derek thought about all the invisible people out there, the janitors and assistants and mailroom workers who kept the world running without recognition or thanks. He thought about the single parents working multiple jobs to give their children better chances. He thought about everyone who had ever been told they would never amount to anything by someone who confused cruelty with truth. To all of them, he sent a silent message of solidarity and hope. Your worth is not determined by those who cannot see you. Your value exists whether or not anyone acknowledges it, and sometimes, if you are lucky, someone will shatter a champagne glass on your behalf, and the whole world will hear the sound of justice finally arriving. The invisible ones matter. They always have. He turned off the Christmas tree lights and headed to his own bedroom. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help and be helped, new chances to choose visibility over hiding. Christine's voice whispered through his memory one final time. "Give our daughter a beautiful life," He smiled in the darkness. "I am trying," he whispered back. "I think I finally understand what that means." The photograph on his nightstand showed Christine holding newborn Penny in the hospital, her smile so full of hope and love that it still took his breath away after all these years. Next to it sat a new frame, showing Derek and Penny at the gala, her red velvet dress bright against his dark suit, both of them smiling at the camera with the easy joy of people who knew exactly where they belonged. 2 photographs, 2 chapters. One unbroken thread of love connecting everything that mattered. The promise he had made to Christine no longer felt like a weight. It felt like wings. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the city in silence and possibility. And in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that had once seemed impossibly out of reach, a father and daughter slept peacefully, their dreams full of chocolate fountains and champagne glasses and the knowledge that tomorrow, whatever it brought, they would face it together. Some families are not meant for more than that, Bradley had said. But he was wrong. Some families are meant for everything. Upgraded apartment, 3 floors higher than their previous place. "Good night, sweetheart. Thank you for being proud of me." Her eyes flickered open briefly. "Always, Daddy." She paused thoughtfully. "Is the boy's daddy going to be okay? Like you became okay?" Derek considered the question. "I hope so. I tried to help him understand what took me a long time to learn, that your worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion." Penny nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Mama always said the best thing when someone helps you is to help someone else. Like a chain." Standing in the doorway of her room, Derek felt the full weight of gratitude for everything that had happened. The humiliation that had felt devastating had become the catalyst for transformation. Regina's intervention had opened doors, but more importantly, it had shown him something Christine had always seen. He was worthy of recognition, not despite his struggles, but because of them. The Christmas tree in their living room glowed with lights they had hung together. Among the ornaments was a new addition, a small glass champagne flute Regina had given him, engraved with the date of what she called his emergence. The breaking of that glass had broken something else, the illusion that invisibility was the only safe choice. He thought about Penny's question from a year ago. "Daddy, do the people at your work like you?" Now he knew the answer. Some liked him, some respected him, some had probably forgotten he existed. But none of that mattered as much as he once thought. What mattered was that he liked himself. What mattered was that when his daughter looked at him, she saw someone worth admiring. The snow continued to fall outside, each flake contributing to a blanket of white that transformed the ordinary city into something magical. Derek thought about all the invisible people out there, the single parents working multiple jobs, everyone who had ever been told they would never amount to anything. To all of them, he sent a silent message. Your worth is not determined by those who cannot see you. Your value exists whether or not anyone acknowledges it. And sometimes, someone will shatter a champagne glass on your behalf, and the whole world will hear the sound of justice finally arriving. He turned off the Christmas tree lights and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help and be helped. Christine's voice whispered through his memory. Give our daughter a beautiful life. He smiled in the darkness. I am trying, he whispered back. I think I finally understand what that means. The photograph on his nightstand showed Christine holding newborn Penny, her smile full of hope. Next to it sat a new frame, Derek and Penny at the gala, her red velvet dress bright against his dark suit, both smiling with the easy joy of people who knew exactly where they belonged. 2 photographs, 2 chapters, one unbroken thread of love connecting everything that mattered.